Alright, a very warm welcome back everyone. Today I want to talk about reverb, so give you the basic understanding of what reverb actually is. We talked about this when we talked about effects channels already, but in this case I want to give you a little bit an overview in a little bit more detail. I've prepared a project here. We have a piano playing here, and as you can hear we have some sort of reverb going on. If we look and take a look into the mixing console, we see that we have the maybe we should do this on the big screen. We see that we have our writing tool here which sends to the reverb channel, and on the reverb channel we have like this big reverb loaded, which is a little bit overwhelming when you look at it first, but we'll break it down in a little bit more detail. We are not going to look at every single knob you can tweak here, but just at the most important parts here. So the first thing you have is basically the global section here and the output section. They should be pretty self-explanatory. However, if we look into the global section here, we see that we have a pre-delay mixing part here, and we have an ER or tail part here. And the way these work is basically you see in this picture what the reverb will be doing. So if I'm raising the pre-delay is basically the time that it takes before the reverb is actually starting, right? So if I'm raising the pre-delay here, you see that the delay, the reverb starts much later in comparison to what it was before. So if I'm now playing anything, you hear that there is quite a distinctive amount of reverb applied on the one hand, of course, but the reverb takes much longer to be applied. And then we have this ER or tail knob, which is very important because it allows you to switch between early reflections, which is down here, and you can see in the picture here that you only have the early reflections, as the name suggests. So basically what is reflected from walls and anything. And if you move this to tail, which is 100%, you have only, so not only, but you have the complete reverb tail in this situation. If you put this to 50% as it was before, you have the early reflections and the tail added together, so they work pretty well. So you have an equal amount of early reflections and tail applied in this situation. And then we have the more important parts down here. So on the one hand, you can tweak the early reflections here. You see that you have a size knob, which basically tells you. So you have to understand that this reverb here, in this case revelation, is an algorithmic reverb, which means that you have an algorithm which prepares all of these reverb situations for you. And the reverb that is applied is based, or the early reflections that are applied is based on this size knob, which tell you how much of the reverb is actually put into this into the algorithm. So if you lower this, you see that there is that the reverb changes. And if I'm now playing this, there should also be a difference in the sound. And if you listen closely, you can probably hear this. This size knob also affects the low cut and high cut parameters, which basically tell you, of course, where this early reflection phase is applied, in this case between 20 Hz and 4800 Hz. But this is not that important. The more important part is this tail section here, because the tail of the reverb is basically what makes the reverb impressive in comparison, or not impressive, but what makes the reverb, or what makes the reverb stand out in these situations. The first thing you have is the delay knob, which is basically like the pre-delay, telling you how long after this pre-delay, when the reverb starts, actually has to start, the tail is delayed. So you have the pre-delay, which tells you how long the reverb takes to start, and then you have the delay, which actually tells you how long the tail of the reverb needs to start. So in this case, we would have like 230 milliseconds for the delay to actually start, and then 20 additional milliseconds in order for the tail to start. Okay, the room size depends how the reverb is actually executed. So 100% means in this case that you have a reverb that is that looks like a cathedral reverb. If you lower this to like 50%, you have medium rooms, and if you go below 50%, you have small rooms. And as you can see in the picture here, this room size depends very much how the reverb is actually sounding, or how the reverb will sound. Let's make an example. This is cathedral, and this would be very short. This would be very short room reverb, and this is the cathedral again. Main time depends how long the reverb will stay. So if I'm putting this to 100%, the reverb will ever last, and if I'm putting this down, the reverb tail is getting cut quite massively, right? You see this here. Let's also make an example for this one. You can hear that there is quite an this changes quite much. Shape allows you to basically set, or basically make the reverb, or explain when the reverb should start. So if you put shape up, this reverb will start much smoother than if you put the reverb down to 0%. 0% works well for drums, for example, and if you put this higher, this allows you to apply the reverb much more smoothly. Density in this case is a switch between the early reflection phase, where you only have like of course the early reflections of this reverb, and if you put this to 100%, you have all of these reflections and all of the tail part and all of the complete reverb added together. So in this case, this would be density of the complete reverb, and if I'm putting this down to 0%, you only get the early reflections, and you can see, or you can hear that there is that this changes the sound quite extensively. And also the tail, the high cut here allows you to set where the reverb should vanish or should attenuate. And if I'm putting this much higher, of course you see that there is a change in the reverb again, but on the other hand, if I'm playing this now, you hear that the reverb gets a little bit more aggressive in the high end, of course, because this is a high cut. And afterwards you have the width, which basically just tells you if you want to put the delay in stereo mode or in mono mode, which would be 0%. You cannot really hear this if I'm putting this to 0% here, because I have a stereo channel, so only the reverb would be applied in mono. But this does not mean that I cannot that my whole channel will be mono. But on the other hand, if you have a mono channel and you put this width down to 0%, you only apply the reverb on the mono channel then. But of course, on the other hand, if you have a mono channel and you put the width up to 100%, you can apply a stereo image on this particular channel. And also, of course, as we are talking about an effects channel here, we can mix the reverb in our situation, and this is why we have the mix set to 100% here and not anything lower than that. And I think this gives you a quick rundown of what reverbs actually do. We did not talk about the modulation and control parameters, but they basically allow you to change the reverb again much more. And in this case, we have low time, we have low frequency, high time, and high frequency, which basically just allow you to set the time, or the of course the time how long it takes for the low frequencies or for the high frequencies in order to vanish, right? So if I'm so the high time here minus 100% means that the high frequencies above 3600 hertz vanish much faster than the low time frequency, or the low frequencies below 360 hertz. And this is one way you can change your reverb even more, right? And this should also be you can also see this in the picture if I'm going to between the extreme values here. So yeah, I think this gives you a quick rundown on the reverb itself.